Sourav Ganguly, the name itself tells you about a man who's considered one of the finest captains that India ever had, an elegant left-hander, considered to be one of the best batters in the history of white ball cricket, and of course had a very fruitful career as a batter in red ball cricket too. But did you know that Sourav Ganguly was this close to not making his India debut? In fact, Sourav Ganguly was this close for not playing cricket at all. That is because he had a near-death experience before playing for India. And that's the story that I'm going to narrate in this episode of SporTales. For this particular story, I'm going to take you back to 1996. Now, if I'm talking about Sourav Ganguly, you remember 1996 as being the year where he made his Test debut. We all remember that he had made his ODI debut in 1992, but that wasn't a great debut, not one that he remembered for very long, was outside the Indian team for 4 years, returned in 1996, and in that second Test match versus England at Lord's, made his Test debut and got 131 runs. Rest, as they say, is history. But why do I say that that debut would have never happened? And it's got nothing to do with any cricketing reason. This was a matter of life and death, and this incident, this scary incident, actually took place in that same year, 1996, in fact on the same tour where Sourav Ganguly made his Test debut. Now, during that tour, Sourav Ganguly was sharing his room with another cricketer. In those days, two cricketers would share a room, and the roommate of Sourav Ganguly on that occasion was Navjot Sidhu. Now, players, when they used to be touring abroad, would always crave for some home-cooked Indian food, and Sourav Ganguly had one uncle who stayed in London, his mama who used to stay in London. In fact, Sourav speaks a lot about him. He was the one man at whose house he would stay at when he was playing club cricket in England, even before making his debut. But on this tour in 1996, he was in London, and he had a plan of going for dinner to his mama's house one evening. Now, as I said, his roommate was Navjot Sidhu, and as most Indian players would be craving for home-cooked food, Sourav, as courtesy, told his teammate that he's going to his uncle's house for dinner, and Navjot Sidhu said, if it would be very great if he can join Sourav Ganguly, and Sourav said, sure, you come along and we'll go to my uncle's house. Now, they were staying in Piccadilly. That's where the team hotel was, in Piccadilly, and his uncle would stay in Pinar, which is another suburb of London, about 13 miles away from where the team hotel was. Those days, it was very common for players to take the London Underground. In fact, it's a common practice in London to use the metro, the Underground as they call it, because knowing the traffic in London, you avoid any sort of taxi or buses or transport on the road because of traffic jam. So common practice, as you would have seen, a lot of times English players even arrive at the ground using the Underground. You've seen a lot of British Prime Ministers take the Underground. So Sourav Ganguly and Navjot Sidhu took the Underground to go to his uncle's house. They had dinner, but the incident that I'm talking about took place when they were returning back home. It was, slightly late at night when they were coming back, and the entire train that they were traveling in was kind of empty. The compartment in which Navjot Sidhu and Sourav Ganguly were sitting in was almost empty, barring 5 youngsters who were sitting on the other side of that compartment of the London Underground where Sourav and Navjot Sidhu were sitting. Those 5 youth were, typically tattooed, big-built youth that were sitting. There were 3 girls and 2 boys, and they were sitting on one side and also consuming alcohol while sitting in the London Underground. They kept staring at both Navjot Sidhu and Sourav Ganguly, clearly knowing that they are foreigners, and were trying to intimidate them. And because they were also high, because of the consumption of alcohol, it did seem like that they were, wanting to pick a fight with these 2 Indian gentlemen who were sitting in the same train. And they kept staring at these Indian players. Sourav Ganguly and Navjot Sidhu knew that they were being stared at, but they would look away. They were trying to avoid any sort of fight or any sort of confrontation. But they kept looking at it. Things came to a head when they got no reaction from these two players, that one of the boys out of those 5 youths that were traveling threw a beer can towards the Indian players. Even on that occasion, Sourav Ganguly quietly picked up that beer can and kept it away, still trying to avoid any confrontation. But while he was keeping the can away, he did mumble something to Navjot Singh Sidhu quietly. And that was the trigger. That is exactly the trigger that these youth were waiting for to pick up a fight. And one of them got up and came close to these two players and asked them what was their problem. Even then, Sourav Ganguly tried to, at that moment, neutralize the situation, ensured that there is no untoward incident that happens, tried not to pick a fight, but the youth wouldn't go away. He kept, speaking to them, kept talking loudly towards them, and eventually Navjot Singh Sidhu's patience ran out and he pushed the youth away who was standing very close to them and mouthing off profanities. Navjot Singh Sidhu pushed him away, and that is exactly what that youth was waiting for. And before anything could be said, that youth started raining punches on the Indian players. Both those guys got together and started hitting the Indian players. As Sourav Ganguly narrates that incident, he actually was protected by Navjot Singh Sidhu. Navjot Singh Sidhu, being the senior pro, actually hugged Sourav Ganguly to ensure that he can protect him, and all the punches that actually fell on Navjot Singh Sidhu. So he took all the blows and tried to safeguard his younger teammate in Sourav Ganguly, and Sourav Ganguly has always been grateful for Navjot Singh Sidhu for that. But the situation could have gotten out of hand, and just at the right moment the train stops. There is a station that comes, but the story is not over. The door opens and Sourav Ganguly now sees a chance that he can run out of that compartment, and he tries to push that youth away and try to make a run for the gate. But as soon as he does that, guess what? That youth takes out a gun and points it directly at Sourav Ganguly. Sourav Ganguly later recalls this incident, and he says that at that moment he could see his death in the face. He says that even now when he recalls that incident, he starts getting scared, he starts shivering, just recalling that incident that happened so many years ago. So that youth pointing the gun directly towards Sourav Ganguly and just almost on the verge of pressing that trigger. Therein, one of the girls, as I mentioned, there were 3 girls and 2 guys. One girl comes there. She's also very tall, big build, tattoos on her arms, pulls that other guy away at that very moment, pulls him away and takes him out of the train. And following that, the remaining 3 youths also step out at that very occasion. Sourav Ganguly at that time is stunned. He can't say a word, neither can Navjot Singh Sidhu. They just sit like that in the train, don't speak to each other till their destination comes, because it is proving to be very difficult for them to process what just happened with them. They were this close from a fatal encounter. Later, as things would pan out, Sourav Ganguly, as I mentioned earlier, would go on to make his test debut in the second test match at Lord's, scores 131 runs. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, he averaged about 105 on that tour, that test tour to England. Rest, as they say, is history, and goes on to have a great career after that. But a career that almost came to a standstill on that evening in a London underground. Just an interesting bit from there. Sourav has often said that London is his second favorite city after Kolkata. He's played a lot of club cricket there. Now also spends his summers in London, owns a house in London. But till today, legend has it that Sourav Ganguly till today does not travel by the London Underground. As I mentioned earlier, London is known for its notorious traffic. It can take you 1 hour to get from point A to point B. That same distance can be covered in 15 minutes if you use the London Underground. But Sourav Ganguly chooses to either take a cab or drive his own car, or even walk on occasions if he has to go from one place to another, but does not take the London Underground at all after that incident in 1996. If you like this story, don't forget to give us a like on our video. Also a reminder, this was another episode of SporTales, our series on interesting stories from the world of sport. If you like this episode, do check out our other stories as well, and we can guarantee you that it will be an experience that you'll remember for a very long time. And yes, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, Sports Today. This is Nikhilnaz taking your leave. Bye-bye.